Hello, everybody. Nice to see so many faces here today. My name's Kate Golden. I'm Bay Nature's digital editor, and I'm excited to welcome you to this Bay Nature talk today on ospreys in the Bay Area. Please, I encourage you all to turn on your cameras for this hour, but please do mute your microphones unless you're asking a question. There will be a Q&A session after the talk. Before we start, I'd like to introduce Bay Nature Magazine. Bay Nature is a quarterly print publication based in Berkeley, California, that focuses on nature and conservation topics local to the 9 counties of the Bay Area, and occasionally a little bit beyond. In addition to our print magazine, we publish weekly digital-only content on our website, baynature.org, and we host a number of in-person hikes as well as these online talks and events. If you're interested in receiving free access to these hikes and talks, I encourage you to become a member at Bay Nature, and I'll circulate links for the membership after this event. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenter for today, Tony Brake. What a special treat this is. Tony is an expert with SF Bay Ospreys who has helped conduct studies on urban nesting Cooper's hawks and golden eagles in the Diablo Range, as well as the nesting expansions of ospreys very recently in the SF Bay Area, along with Harvey Wilson. Thank you so much, Tony, for joining us today. Please unmute yourself, Tony, or we're ready for you.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Again, thanks, Kate. I guess a lot of you have seen a lot of ospreys around our region, and it may not be evident that this is actually a very recent phenomenon. So I'll be describing a study I've been doing over the last 10 or so years of this expanding population. I'll share the screen here, and those are already selected. Okay, so
Tony, before you start, I just want to say one thing, which is that just for everybody to know, as you listen, you're going to come up with questions. Please feel free to type those questions into the chat. I'm going to keep track of those, and there'll be time after Tony's presentation to go over questions, and we'll have a specific Q&A session. So Tony, take it away.
Okay. Oops, why is it not advancing? Okay. So this is seems like a particularly appropriate venue to present this because during the course of these studies, Bay Nature's published 2 articles in 2013 and 2018 about this burgeoning osprey population in the Bay Area. But anyway, to give an idea of the basics on an osprey or ospreys, it's a large raptor, length about 2 feet long, wingspan can be 5 to 6 feet, and the female is significantly bigger than males. The diet is almost exclusively live fish, which they can catch by diving as deep as a meter underwater to grab the fish. They're highly specialized, therefore, to live this lifestyle. So they have a wing anatomy allows them to, after diving in the water, they can take right off. Other raptors would have to sort of paddle to shore or something to get out of the water. They have a reversible outer toe, and they have these little spike-like structures, spicules on the legs and feet, and long curved talons, which allow them to more easily hold a slippery fish. And then they have closable nostrils or nares, so when they dive in the water, they won't have water forced into the nares. They're very cosmopolitan. They breed on every continent except Antarctica, breed or winter, and they're also are a very excellent sentinel species for aquatic habitats since they exclusively eat fish and can show you the health of the habitat by virtue of their breeding productivity. And for example, they showed this striking decline during the DDT era, and then really remarkable recovery following the ban of widespread use of DDT. So here's a little showing of how they actually catch the fish. It shows how adept they are. And there's sort of two different methods here. I'm not sure. This is, I think, in either Scottish Highlands or in Scandinavia. So I think there's about 5 fish there at one time, which you can do with a small schooling fish. This is more what we typically see around the bay. So obviously have this amazing eyesight where they can spot this potential prey from 50 or 100 feet above the water. Okay, so here's some of those anatomical features that I mentioned. So here are the little spikes or spicules on their legs and also on the toes that help them hold the fish. And this is the reversible outer toe. It's the fourth digit, which can be forward for perching, but can be um, reversed so that they can have two talons on each side of the fish for holding them. So they're the only diurnal raptor that has this feature, and some owls do as well. And these are the nostrils, are sort of fleshy nostrils that can collapse when they dive into the water. So this is a little bit out of date now, this global range. So the orange shows where they breed. So throughout the higher latitudes in the northern hemisphere, and then there are some that's the orange. The purple are non-migratory populations that breed there and do not migrate to the south. But most of these northerly breeders migrate to the equator or below for the winter period. And this is a little more of close up for the North America population. So you can see San Francisco Bay is sort of at this junction of the year-round and wintering ranges. But the sort of for the history of ospreys in San Francisco Bay, this give you a little bit of an idea of how things looked not that long ago. So actually way back as far as 2,600 years ago, um, there there do not seem to be any remains from osprey identified in this Emeryville shell mound that Jack Broughton had carefully cataloged, even though there are plenty of other raptors in there. And ospreys are probably one of the easiest raptor to hunt because of their nesting behavior. Um, and then Grinnell's landmark studies on wildlife in California reported that they were rare in the Bay Area, sort of migrants or uh, visiting wintering birds, and that the nearest nests were on the Russian River in Sonoma County. And then in the mid 1960s, a colony developed at Kent Lake in Marin County. It's on the Mount Tamalpais watershed. And by 1994, it had grown to about 52 occupied nests, but it's now declined to under 20. I think maybe in less than 10 in the most recent year. So then in 1990, the first nesting record was reported by Leong and others on the Mare Island Strait. It was on a pile driver along the shoreline. Um, and then there were a couple nests in the East Bay in 1998, 99. That got that from some breeding bird atlases for Alameda and Contra Costa County. But then the Mare Island breeding it continued to only be rare, maybe one nest until after 2003. Then there was this rapid increase of of population along the Maryland Strait and then we started to see a few nests further south. So in 2012 and 13, Harv Wilson and I decided to document this uh, nesting population. So we did a census, and that was published in 2014. And then, since it seemed to be apparent that the population was continuing to expand, I sort of decided to continue documenting this expansion. And so that's what I'm going to talk about mainly today. So this this map, this shows the nests that we found in 2013. So you can see that there's this dense population up along the Mare Island Strait by that point, a few nests in Richmond, um, and then a couple further south in San Francisco and Alameda. And this is what the picture looked like last year. So we have that dense population along the Mare Island Strait, but now there's a even larger population on the Richmond shoreline and across the San Pablo Strait on the Marin shoreline. And this is the narrowest part of the bay. So I don't know, that may have something to do with it because the flow through there. And then there's Oakland Alameda has a few nests, and then there are these scattered ones down in the South Bay, which it just hasn't really there've been nests there and had limited success, but there's still each year a few of them. So that sort of shows a map of where all the nest sites were. But here's more of a quantitative picture of the productivity of these osprey nests in our area. So first, I want to give definitions of the nest status. So we would record a nest status for each one of these nests by the end of the season. So an occupied nest would be when there's a territorial pair either maintaining or defending an established nest or building a new nest, but eggs are not laid yet. An active nest is one that actually contains egg being incubated or the presence of nestlings. And that can be determined by various ways, by seeing them feeding, or you can actually see the nestlings sometime. And then a nest will be deemed successful if one or more of the chicks fledges. But in fact, the convention for raptors is once they reach 80% of their normal age of first flight, they will be counted as fledged because there's very little attrition typically after that. So for ospreys, that would be when I would determine they were 6 weeks old, they would be counted as fledged. So this is what it looked like looking over this whole span of almost 12 years now. So you can see that it starts out, this is the census that Harv and I carried out in 2013. So there were 23. Oh, and so the height of each bar is the total number of active nests. And the blue portion is the number of successful nests. So you see there were 23 active nests in 2013. And that was already kind of a big increase from 2012 when we did sort of a pilot study. So you continued to see this big increase in the number of nests up until about 2019 or 20. And now it seems to be leveling off. It's 50 or so nests, and it sort of fluctuates up and down. The yellow line shows the number of fledglings from all of these nests. So that also showed this increase, and it's sort of leveled off with fluctuations from year to year. As you can see, there were these 2019 and 2023 had, particularly poor productivity. And that was probably due to spring storm events, which can interfere with what can cause mortality in the nestlings, the young nestlings, or can make fishing more difficult. And then this is for this year. This is a provisional numbers that it'd probably be a week or two before I have the final numbers on that. And then this is the way to express that productivity is typically used as the number of fledglings per active nest. So you can see it averages about 1.6. It fluctuates up and down. There's just these 2 years that have the low productivity. This shaded area is the the level that you would expect for a stable or growing population. So you can see this is well above that threshold. Even in the worst years, it'd be enough probably to keep a population stable, particularly for a long-lived species like ospreys. So here are typical natural nests that would historically be seen. So they might be in live trees. You see, typically they're something with a broken off top, somehow, flat on the top, and then often on snags. So this is in Yellowstone, but they're very versatile nesting. So in Mono Lake, they have been nesting on the tufa towers since the lake level dropped enough that some of these towers are sticking up well above the water. And there's no fish in Mono Lake, so they have to commute to the lakes, mountain lakes, and streams nearby. And then this is in Baja, but also in the Sonora um, desert. They might use these cardone giant cacti. And in predator-free islands, they will nest on rock outcrops or even on the ground. So this is in the Persian Gulf. You can see this must be a rather ancient nest to have that many sticks built up. But what we found with the population here that I've been describing, there is one nest on a tree, and tree doesn't look like that anymore. It's all the fronds it's died and the fronds are off of there. And that was a former great blue heron nest. But every other nest is on a human-made, anthropogenic structure. So here's, for example, so these are all at Mare Island. This is a tall stationary crane that was used when the shipyard was active. Um, there's a series of lights out on the piers, the Coast Guard piers, and they nest on several of those. And this one is sort of interesting because it's sort of gone back and forth between being an osprey nest or a great blue heron nest. And then for a couple of years, they actually shared it. So you can see there was a osprey nest on the top and then two great blue heron nests in the lower sections. The last couple of years, there've been all great blue herons in there. So, and then there are now particularly a lot of marine structures such as channel markers or these dolphins where they've built nests up on high enough off the water, and they're actually excellent nest sites for them because they're not accessible to predators. Let's see, and then here are probably the most common nests in a lot of places are on these power poles. So this was at Point Melody in Richmond a number of years ago. This was not an energized pole, but they definitely use energized poles in a lot of cases. And then this is a transmission tower down in Foster City. So you can see it's like up in here, this crossbars, and they have built a nest there. So, from that, you can see that it's a pretty healthy population. However, nesting in the midst of this urbanized and industrial area presents a lot of threats to the ospreys. So threats to the individual ospreys include collisions with vehicles or buildings and other structures. We've seen a number of those cases and probably haven't seen that's probably just seen the tip of the iceberg as far as vehicle collisions. Osprey often bring a fishing line or plastic twine as nest material because it presumably resembles vegetation that they would line the nest with. So this has resulted in a number of nestlings getting entangled and tethered to the nest. So when they try to fly, they can't go beyond the length of the line that's hanging out from there. So I think at this point, there's one very recently at Point Pinole. Unfortunately, that one was um, um, able to be captured and the line removed and treated at Lindsay Wildlife and put back on the nest. And we've been a couple other ones like that, but there's been at least one that died. We didn't find it quickly enough, and it had foot had amputated and it died, of course. Um, and then electrocution and fire. So those nests on the active utility poles are clearly a hazard. A nestling at Mare Island died by electrocution in 2014. And at the Port of Oakland, there was a nest on a light that had um, wires that weren't in conduit, and that resulted in a fire at some point during the night and had young at the time. And then used to be shooting and egg collecting and millinery, use of the feathers. It's less of a problem than it used to be in the past. Although Atlantic coast ospreys are sometimes killed at aquaculture sites on their wintering grounds in Central and South America. And until not that long ago, I didn't think this was happening in the US, but actually the USDA actually does use lethal control at aquaculture facilities and airports. So there's over 100 a year, at least shot in the US, unfortunately. So then we worry about the threats to the nests themselves. So a lot of the nests are on derelict old structures, so those might collapse. Um, and then other ones may be removed for shoreline development. And so, and then often with equipment like the power poles or cranes or so forth, um, the managers of these equipment or property may want to remove them so they can use the equipment. And it's permissible to remove nests outside of the nesting time. So when there are, as long as there aren't eggs or young, they can be removed. But the osprey are very persistent once they select a nest site. So they'll just try to rebuild on that site or a nearby one. And then human disturbance is a problem, although osprey are fairly able to habituate to human presence. But um, one thing is often people will get excited because they're so easy to see these nests and photograph, um, and they'll approach too closely. But they give you ample warning. The ospreys give ample warning. So here's an example of the alarm call that you would get if you're going too close to an osprey nest. So that's how it start, but then they will typically take off if you don't kind of retreat a ways. And then other calls that you will hear around osprey nest is this guard call, it's called. So that's reserved for other ospreys when they see intruding ospreys coming too close to their nest. They would try to warn them off. And then the other call that's pretty common is this one. So that's a solicitation call. It's typically given by the female or the young on the nest. So as they said, it's permissible to remove these nests, but osprey will usually rebuild them. But fortunately, that's very easily mitigated. So here's an example of a nest at the Chevron refinery where this pair had been trying to nest on a energized electrical pole, and then they put this nest platform up, and they very quickly adapted to it. And so here's an example of one of these nests that could collapse. So this was in Crockett, and this nest collapse caused a power outage in the area. But PG&E then subsequently installed one of these plastic molded nest tubs that they actually have hundreds of these around the state because so many osprey are nesting on their power poles. So these actually can be put right on the original pole, or they can be put a nearby pole can be erected and placed on there. And there's a very high success rate of them being diverted to these. And then this is another one that was put up at the Chevron Long Wharf. It's an oil loading pier, but they have a lot of power. They have a power transfer station there at the base of the pier. So in all these cases, it's been pretty successful. So this is the one at Mare Island in 2014. And one of these nestlings died by electrocution. But then fortunately, Island Energy installed this platform, and that's been used ever since. So during the course of the this expansion, there's really been a shift in what structures are used by the Ospreys. So the blue bars are what was used in 2013, and the yellow bars are what was true in 2023. So there were a lot of on light structures, and cranes were the most common in 2013. Uh, light structures are still very commonly used, but we've gone from 0 artificial nest platforms utilized to 13 last year. So hopefully this will continue to be a method that's used. And then also the marine structures are increasingly the uh, site of choice for ospreys. And it's fortunately the Coast Guard or the private marinas have been removing the nest outside of the breeding season sometimes, presumably to get access to the batteries that are in there, but they seem to be allowing them to nest in there during the breeding season. Their nests do not obscure the markers, so hopefully that practice will continue as well. So probably a lot of you are familiar with this nest cam at the port of Richmond that was installed by the Golden Gate Bird Alliance. And so this is on a historic whirly crane at the port, and this is the female and male, the Rosie and Richmond, and this is I can't remember what year this was. I think it was maybe 2020. Um, with young that are getting close to the fledging age. So here's just a little sampling of some of the intimate footage that was obtained at different ages for the young. So these are young that are only a week or so old. And then by a month, they start looking like this. And you can see some of this plastic twine here, unfortunately, here and here. And then this is a bit later, and they're getting very close to their first powered flights. You can see this one is exercising its wings and sort of practicing. They do this for quite a while before they actually start flying away from the nest. So, oops, um, so a lot of you may know that this osprey pair relocated to a tall light in the auto offload facility there at the Port of Richmond so that you don't have that close view. But actually, there are a number of sites around the bay where you can get a pretty decent view from shore of these nests, and then you have the benefit of it being outdoors in the fresh air. So here's one at Carquinez Strait that I think I took this just last week. So this is on one of these dolphins, and you can see that's the Mare Island Strait in the background. And this is just west of the Carquinez Bridge. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so that's Vallejo shoreline of Mare Island in the background. So that's the female. She was taking off to chase off a pelican that got too close. And in the meantime, the male was bringing in a fish. And then, which she then feeds to the young. As I said, this is just last week, so they'll be around for several more weeks. This is near, if any of you are familiar with the Nantucket that burned down down below the bridge. It's right at that site. And this next one is probably the best opportunity to watch the osprey from an early stage. Here, you realize you can't see them until they get pretty big and are able to stand up. So this is at Buckeye Point, which is on the Marin shoreline it's a picnic area, a China camp. So the observation point is sort of above the nest, which is offshore on another one of these dolphins. So you're seeing young, like the youngest one is probably less than a week old. And then there's some perches pretty close by that the male utilizes. This is a couple weeks ago. So this is, you might notice here that there are four young have reached pretty advanced age. So this is not very common, although we have uh, about three other examples during the time been documenting this. They may be flying around at this point, but the ospreys stay sort of focused on the nest for up to a month after their first flights. So one thing we're interested in is where do these osprey go in the winter after the breeding season? Um, so to get that, well, first of all, these are examples where it's been studied in great detail. The Atlantic coast is where it's been best studied, where they've put transmitters on many ospreys at this point. So they all follow the Atlantic coast and then do these water crossings and either winter on the Caribbean islands or actually in South America. And there's been a few from the upper Midwest, and these look like two of them actually joined up with the Atlantic flyway, and then some with the Central flyway, and those go down through Mexico and Central America into northern South America. And the population is probably informative for our population is that these ones from Oregon and British Columbia, which with a few exceptions, all migrate to Mexico or Central America. So that's sort of the first thought of where the migratory ospreys from our population might go. Um, Although it turns out there are several, at least around Richmond, probably some of the other nests, there are three or four males that actually overwinter uh, uh, so far. And this is a little more close up of the the Pacific Northwest ospreys. So you can see that primarily they go to Mexico and Central America with there's that one in the Gulf Coast and one in I think Venezuela. So to get at this, we've have bans on but Teresa Ellie and has organized some banders from the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory. So while the ospreys were nesting on that whirly crane, when it was accessible, bans were put on the young, 15 different young. Five of those we know are not alive anymore, but there could be as many as 10 with these bans. And hopefully we'll get some band sightings reports from south of here, but no, so far none. So, but we have seen three of these returning to the Bay Area as adults. So ospreys, after their first migration, they don't return until after their second winter, and so this was the first cohort of young in 2017. You can see this one here, ZR is the code on the band, and in 2019 it showed up on the camera at the nest trying to land, but it was chased off um, by the female parent because now it's just seen as an intruding adult. Um, and then this other one, it was in 2018. This VU, and in 2020, Ralph Pericoli and I actually spotted this same one at Point San Pablo eating a fish. And then the most exciting one is this one here is you see the code ZD that was hatched in 2020, and then last year we saw it at the Coyote Point Marina, and it's actually paired up with a female. Now they didn't successfully nest that last year, but this year they should now. You can't see the band very well, but this is that same male with a female and two young. So this is the first of this population that we've actually seen. So hopefully there'll be more of these showing up in the region. And so if you do see any of these bands, so they're all blue with a white code on, two-letter code on them. What you should do is report them to the USGS banding laboratory. Here's the website, reportband.gov. It's fairly easy to remember. And not just if you see any that are a different type of band, the banders of those would be interested too. So, and then you'd be the proud owner of one of these certificates that you'll get from the USGS, and it'll tell you where and when they were banded, and then this information all goes into a database, and that can be very useful in understanding the movements of ospreys. So this was this quote from Roger Peterson, which seems to be particularly pertinent to our population. That if we can just accommodate them, we can continue to have the delight of having all these ospreys nesting around us. And that's it. That's this is from our front window. There's a nest platform at the Richmond Yacht Club that we can see from the front window. So that was quite a treat a few years ago when that started to be used. Anyway, well, that's sort of the end. And if you have any questions, or I guess Kate has collected some questions we can answer.
Yes, thank you so much, Tony.
Yeah, okay.
And wow, those videos are so incredible. I love that you got the sound on them as well. Let's everybody thank Tony for sharing his time, and now it's time to start the Q&A. Please turn your cameras on so that we can make this a cozy group conversation. First, I think out of the gate we have S. Hunt, who has a couple of questions about ospreys and heat tolerance and survival rate. Go ahead, S. Hunt. Please feel free to ask your question, and yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to know, so I've been watching the Buckeye nest, and it's been really hot. Sometimes the air is completely dead there, and I wonder if they have any way to keep themselves cool. Like, ibex have that rate mirabile over their brain to move blood differently in heat areas. And I wondered if the ospreys have something similar.
Well, I think they have a pretty high range that they can tolerate. And I think even what we consider hot here is probably not that hot in some of the populations, like in Florida, the Sonora Desert. So they obviously have a way to dissipate the heat. There's a lot of surface area on the feather, and I think they might have the feathers a little more loosely held, so the skin gets a little more evaporative cooling. But what's sort of interesting when it's pretty hot, or particularly when it's getting a direct sun, the female will often sort of shade the young, because they're probably not as good at as dealing with the heat. So she'll have her wings out, and the young will be kind of gathered in her shadow. But anyway, they seem to be, at least with our climate, they seem to tolerate our temperature range. And as I said, some other areas, it's actually probably quite a bit hotter.
Okay, and then my other question was so once a young fledges, like, what is their survival rate within the first year and beyond?
Well, we don't know for our population, but there are these, particularly the ones that have been banded in large numbers on the East Coast. It's about 50%. the first year or the first 2 years, the adults is probably 90% survival um, annually. And it could be that the population here might have a little bit easier time because they don't have to do this. Even if they are migrating to Central America and Mexico, they don't have to do a big overwater crossing. They can move along California and go to lakes and hunt along the way. So that it's not. And also we have a, a pretty big window where they can breed successfully. So they do tend to show up in February and March, and then all the young are pretty much have fledged meaning they can fly, although they'll stay around by August, but then you see them around until October. And then they sort of almost all disappear around the nests. But I said that some of the males around here where I've been able to observe them throughout the winter seem to be staying over winter, but I never see juveniles, and I don't know if I've ever seen a female, at least around one of these nests during the non-breeding season.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call on Diane Ayers, who had a couple of questions about ospreys' cultural role, ospreys as food, and also something about Rosie and Richmond.
Hi, Tony.
Yes,
Thanks. It's a really great talk, and always learn something from you. It's really wonderful to see the great images too. So yeah, I've just always really been curious about the fact that ospreys didn't nest in the Bay Area in historic times. And I mean, I certainly can understand it during, the mining times when the bay was so polluted and from other pollution that happened later on. But it was interesting to see the data from or the information from the Emeryville shell mound. So, which I guess means that they weren't used as a food source. And so here's a weird question. Did Native Americans in other areas eat ospreys? It just seems kind of odd to eat ospreys.
Yeah.
They were
they did in other places where it was sort of known. Yeah, so they didn't seem to nest. They probably did not nest here, and it probably had to do with their nesting requirements, I presume. The kind of natural nests are on these trees, so we didn't have these kind of trees around the bay, right around the bay, because they were nesting not far away from here, where there are more of these tall trees where they can nest on the tops of them. So it may have had to do with that. Now it is possible. So this went back to 2,600 years ago, but the bay wasn't really populated until like 4,000 years ago or something. They could have been extirpated quickly because they're nesting. If they nested in these open areas like that, they would really be easy to hunt. If you just look at all the nests around here, if you wanted to, it would be a very it'd be high value and easy to procure nests. But it may just be they just didn't nest right around the bay, but they nested throughout California. So it's now it was also before the damming, there's all this stuff coming in during the gold mining days, but actually the bay was pretty muddy until they started damming upstream during the nest. We see how it is when we've had these really wet winters and then big snowpack, and you look out in the bay and it's pretty brown. So it might have been not such easy foraging in the in the appropriate nesting season, which would be like March to June. So I don't know. It's all kind of speculation, but I think the big key step was them adapting to using these human-made structures, and you can see, they only nest on those now. So now there's like 57 nests around the bay, and not other than that one palm tree, none of them are on natural structures.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'll go ahead and ask my other question sort of related to that. Do you have any thoughts on why Rosie and Richmond would relocate their nest from the Whirly Crane?
It's a
I
better
know
site. As far as Osprey go, it's a better site. It's not accessible to raccoons,
Yeah,
humans, banders coming up and all this. So I think it's a more attractive site. And there are a number of nests on those type of lights.
Yeah.
And every year some of them relocate. In fact, when this cam was getting set up, I gave a warning, they might not nest here after you get this all set up. So it's um, uh, it's not an unusual place for them to nest, and there aren't that many cranes that are actually used. I think that was sort of, people kind of thought that was a primary site just because of the initial ones, but
yeah,
I don't know. They do relocate nests from time to time.
yeah. Okay, thanks.
There was another nest at Alameda that was on a platform they put up on a jetty, and they went up to similar sort of light. And there are 3 nests on lights at the Port of Richmond, Port of Oakland.
Mhm.
So it's an attractive, and sometimes they may use information from other ospreys to pick a type of nest site to use.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Anyway,
had a
I
question
say it's
from,
less accessibility is probably what makes it attractive. So as long
Right.
as the port will leave them there, and these lights at least don't have exposed wires. So the one I was saying at the Port of Oakland where they had a fire, it's an old style light and it had these the wires are available, and the ospreys, they kind of chew up on the nest to kind of soften it up, the nest. So I think they end up biting into these wires, and that's probably what set it off.
Yeah, great, thank you.
we had a question from Beth about how ospreys learn to forage. Beth, are you there? Want to ask your question? You said you had no camera, but do you have a mic? I will just ask
Well, so she wanted to
for
like to know
you.
how.
She basically wanted to know how ospreys learn the best fishing spots. Is it like trial and error, or is there some way they know when the fishing is good in a certain area?
Yeah, well, they don't need to learn how to fish, because when people have used these try to establish osprey populations or reestablish, they might use this hacking procedure where they take the young when they're pretty advanced, but before they fly, and put them in a tower, and then they'll provide food to them, and then they will eventually just go off and start fishing on their own. As far as finding where to fish, they probably do follow the adults around here, but then they probably get a lot of the information from other ospreys. There's actually a whole paper on this called the information transfer in ospreys, where they looked at there was a colony where the ospreys had to go some distance to fish, and when they and then looked at the frequency of, like, when an osprey would come in with a fish, they would then, for I don't know how long after that, track how many leave and which direction they went. So if the ospreys came back with a schooling fish, there would be this increased flight off in the same direction. If they came back with flounder or something, that didn't. So I mean, there's a lot more information that they can gather that we have no idea about. But anyway, they probably, because also since they tend to have these sort of loose colonies, there's a lot of information there. But I'm sure there's a lot of trial and error as well, because I see
I
them
have
fly
seen,
around pretty distant from the nest and just keep going along the shoreline, looking and looking, and then all of a sudden they spot a school. So
well, they're just like human fishermen, right? Like always keeping an eye on the other
yeah,
anglers, see
yeah,
what they're bringing
oh,
in.
yeah.
I have seen some older papers suggesting some extremely high success rates for osprey in fishing, and I was wondering if anybody has done that kind of look at their success rates here.
Not here, no.
But it
I
was
don't. I would say
something
it's not as
north
high
of
as,
70%.
well, more than 50%, I think, for adults. But
Yeah.
it might be a little more challenging here. I mean, there's the high abundance for them, and also it's not so seasonal as it is at other places. But I just, I don't know, as much as I've been watching the Osprey, I haven't seen that many. Had the opportunity to see them. I'm usually like kind of focused on the nest, and they don't necessarily hunt right around the nest. So, but it must be like a reasonable level, particularly during when they have young, because they have to
Well, best
spend a lot of time to get enough fish. And particularly if there's like, see this nest at Buckeye Point that has 4 young. That's, they're and the fish at the Whirly Crane, when it's been being followed, there was like about 700 fish brought in during the course of the nesting season, with the male bringing most of those in. So it's pretty demanding, and that was probably just enough for to raise those young, because I don't think they do any extra fishing.
Yeah. Beth,
I haven't
speaking
seen,
of
I
that
will
Buckeye
say one more
Point,
thing is I haven't seen this type of behavior that you see when there's a food limitation that's really aggressive. I mean, there is some of that goes on, but there a lot of in a lot of cases where the food isn't so good, there'll be a lot of aggression in the nest. They don't actually kill the other ones, but they'll dominate them so they don't get to eat. The older ones or stronger ones will just batter them until they kind of go off and then eventually starve, whatever.
we just have a few minutes for more questions, so drop them in the chat if you have any last ones, and I'll call on, let's see, we have one from Woody. Would you like to ask your question, please, about eagles versus osprey?
Yeah, well, here in West Marin, there's kind of a narrative that we have fewer ospreys than we used to because the bald eagles have increased. I was interested to see your data about Kent Lake, where there was enormous numbers, and actually they're probably a lot less than you think there are now. But do you know about interactions between bald eagles and ospreys?
Well, it's not it's antagonistic for sure. And they tend to often to use the same habitats, but so maybe that's why one reason why osprey tend to be sort of semi-colonial, because they might be able to fare better if they're most of the time it's the bald eagles parasitizing the fish, harassing the ospreys until they drop the fish. And that's kind of well known in a lot of places, but they also will predate on the young. So it probably the place where the first bald eagle nest at Kent Lake was established in 2008. That area sort of cleared out of ospreys pretty quickly, according to Jules Evans, but the numbers continued to decline. So I don't know how much of it's due to the increase in bald eagles. I mean, there definitely is an increase, but it's not like a huge number. But they used to hunt in Tomales Bay and San Francisco Bay, so it's energetically much better to be nesting right around the bay. So maybe once that adaptation occurred because all the Kent Lake nests are on trees. So once they started nesting on these anthropogenic structures, which could support a much bigger nesting population, could be some of those tended to move to the bay, or their progeny moved to the bay because it was more efficient. As we were talking before, they sort of pay attention to the other ospreys. So if they see this, it's a sign that there's good quality habitat if there's a lot of ospreys nesting there. So that might attract yet more ospreys. So as I said, it is sort of leveling off, but why that is, I don't know exactly. I mean, one thing that happens is they use a lot of their time to chase off interlopers. So maybe as you get more and more, that actually takes a toll. And it must be the South Bay is not as good a habitat because that population just hasn't grown, but there's plenty of nest sites.
Well, one more question we had from MIDI about where ospreys are going from here. MIDI, are you there?
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So has there been any evidence this year of any ospreys going to San Pablo Reservoir. It doesn't look like Richie's been going there. There's no golden trout have come in. But you have any way of knowing if there are other ospreys going to the reservoir?
There are ospreys there. I don't know which, people do see them there, but I don't know. That was the only case where you sort of knew a specific osprey that was going. But one thing I'll say about that is that those two years when he was bringing a lot of the rainbow trout and other fish, the reservoir was like less than 40. It was like really low.
Oh,
And I wonder if it became like so easy to catch the fish because they stock them by the dam and then it takes them a while to spread out. So it might have become like such easy pickings. It seems like a long ways away, but not for an osprey. It's
no, I timed him once. It was 10 minutes, I think. I once actually
yeah, that's
saw
about
him.
right
I was
because
at
they
the
can
reservoir
fly
and then
30 some
somebody
miles an
reported
hour,
him, so it
so
was- yeah.
so once they discover it. But there are ospreys that are there more regularly. Maybe they're not nesting there or they're nesting more nearby. But there don't seem to be a lot of nests. The nests do seem to be mainly right around the bay.
Uh-huh. Thanks.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to wrap it up there. Even though I have a list of 10 or 12 questions of my own for Tony. Thank you so much for sharing your time and incredible
Sure.
expertise on this. I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you to everyone in the audience for just tuning in and joining us, and especially to those who ask questions. For those of you who are getting interested in free access to our talks as well as our hikes, please consider joining as a member. I'm going to just drop this link in the chat to make it easy for you, and we're going to send out an email with links to join as a member. We also have a couple of talks coming up and a talk and a hike that you guys might be interested in. On July 23rd, we're going to have a talk on bears the black bears that have been slowly repopulating or just coming into the North Bay, and a Bay Nature hike at Muir Beach on July 25th with, fingers crossed, potential hope of seeing a Western pond turtle. Megan Waller-Murphy, who's a local bear tracker and expert, is going to be doing that bear talks. They're both going to be, I think they're going to be really good, and you should just look out in your email for links to those after our talk. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.